Hello, everyone. We heard that on Sunday we may have had some technical difficulties and our service was not live streamed or saved to share on YouTube. So we thought we would take a moment this week and pause to share some of what we worshiped together with on Sunday, to share the message with you and a little bit about the children's time as well. So this week, I was going to pick up a box during the children's time. We were talking about the Bible. And so we held up for the children our regular Bible, one that might feel more familiar to us. And then I pulled this box out. And this box comes from our church school room, and it lays out the Bible in a different way. So each of these little books here are books from the Bible. And it's helpful to see because it helps us understand that our Bible is not just one book of one story, but of many different stories shared over generations. And that they're individual books. So the first 5 here are the Pentateuch, which are the first 5 books of our Bible. So there's Genesis and Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And then we have stories about prophets and judges and different pieces and different people throughout. So these 2 pieces are our Hebrew scriptures, or our Old Testament. And then here we have our New Testament. We have the first 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, which are our Gospels, and then we have the book of Acts, and then we have our letters. And we were talking about how there's different genres in the Bible. So we have historical, laws, and narrative all bundled together, so we kind of hear that in our Pentateuch. We have books of wisdom, which we have in the Psalms and Job and Proverbs. We have our Gospels. We have epistles, which are letters. And we have books of prophecy, and then we have this other book, and you find it throughout some of the other pieces, this type of writing, but we have one book that we know that might feel familiar, which is Revelations, which is apocalyptic literature. And I shared with the kids that apocalyptic literature is literature that comes usually during times of struggle, when things are hard. And it's a type of literature that means to unveil or to reveal. And so when we read it, there's lots of imagery that is used to help, and it's symbolic, lots of symbolic imagery that is used to help bring a clearer picture when unveiled about how God is working in that time, for that specific time in history. So we hear in our scripture today a little bit about this apocalyptic literature. Well, it is apocalyptic literature. So let us listen to Luke chapter 21, verses 5 through 19. Hear what the Spirit is speaking to the church. Some of his disciples began talking about the majestic stonework of the temple and the memorial dedications on the walls. But Jesus said, "The time is coming when all these things will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of another." "Teacher," they asked, "when will this happen? What sign will show us that these things are about to take place?" He replied, "Don't let anyone mislead you. For many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah and saying, 'The time has come.' But don't believe them. And when you hear of wars and insurrections, don't panic. Yes, these things must take place first, but the end won't follow immediately." Then he added, "Nations will go to war against nations and kingdoms against kingdom. But before all this occurs, there will be a time of great persecution. You will be dragged into the synagogues and prisons, and you will stand trial before kings and governors, because you are my followers. But this will be your opportunity to tell them about me. So don't worry in advance about how to answer the charges against you, for I will give you the right words and such wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to reply or refute you. Even those closest to you, your parents, brothers, relatives, and friends will betray you. They will even kill some of you. And everyone will hate you because you are my followers. But not a hair on your head will perish. By standing firm, you will win your souls. So we'll take a moment, hear these hard words, these confusing words, and we'll respond in an interesting way, which we talked about with the kids. We're going to respond in song. We're going to hear a song from Rafi called Every Child. Every child is a child of the universe, here to sing a song of beauty and grace, here to love like a flower in bloom, every girl and boy a blessing and a joy. So often when we speak of children in our communities, we speak of them as our hope for the future, for who they will become, the potential we see, and all the ways that they will possibly contribute to these communities and our society as a whole. However, I appreciate Rafi's song that was just shared by Tyson because it sings of a hope in the present tense. We sing of a hope that honors the truth inherent in every child, right here and now. Children have this beautiful way of living fully into the now. They are taking in all of their experiences of the world and show up with all of who they are, with all of their emotions. And they emote these authentic expressions of happiness, joy, love, fear, anger, jealousy, and more that we all experience personally. They learn through all of these emotions about the world around them, how to interact, build relationships, and stay safe. These relationships and their sense of safety derived from these relationships lay the groundwork for curiosity and the ability to explore the world and possibilities around them. These relationships allow them to lift their voices loudly, to sing out fully, and play uninhibited. As adults, we need to be reminded of this time and space of childhood, challenged by it, and invited into it in all of its reality, as it is this time that reminds us of the hope of today. In them, we are reflected truths about ourselves that they can help us embrace. They are whole people living fully into their now. And just as it is our responsibility to walk alongside, to teach, model, guide, and protect them, children also model for us a way of knowing, of being in relationship both in community and with God, that we all benefit from when we are privileged with children in our midst. Children can help us unpack the good news of our gospel reading from Luke this morning. This text seems devastating upon a first read. You have the disciples looking at this beautiful temple building that many people had dedicated their time, money, and their craft to. They're admiring what had been done for God in this place where God dwelled. And Jesus tells them that it will all be destroyed. Not only that, but the world will reel from war and conflict. Disciples will suffer persecution, and that even families will turn on each other. This does not exactly seem like an uplifting passage. I suspect for many who are listening today that it even stirs up feelings about today's realities and current events, leaving us with an unsettling feeling. However, it is helpful to place this text in the context of the people in the gospel that the gospel was writing about, and their history as Jewish people, alongside the original listeners that this text was written for, because this is apocalyptic literature. For the original listeners of this gospel, the temple had already been destroyed. The story had already taken place, and the temple was already gone. And then, for the people that Luke is writing about, there would have been a cultural memory of being in exile, and the temple being previously destroyed and later rebuilt. In the Jewish scriptures, the Babylonian exile was allowed to happen and the temple destroyed because the Jewish people were not living according to the law and had forgotten God and the covenantal promise. Subsequently, this way of understanding would also inform the perception of the destruction of the temple after the time of Jesus. And it is this understanding that is an important clue to what is being unveiled in this piece of apocalyptic literature. Commentator Patrick Odin shares that this prophecy is a radical reinterpretation to the understanding that the destruction of the temple was God rejecting the Jewish people. Jesus, as the Son of God in Luke's gospel, spoke of this happening, meaning that God knew it would happen, and spoke of God being present for all God's followers in this time despite the destruction. Not only is God present, but God will equip God's people for that time. That even though the persecution and turmoil are real and challenging, that God will give them the words in order that God's good news will continue to be shared. That ultimately God is in control and faithful. And that in this time, God's people need to remain faithful to God. The hope being that God continues to work through the times of political upheaval, even when everything seems bleak, and continues to work with and through God's own people to offer a message of hope for all. As we reflect on our world among us, around us, on our communities of faith, this passage can seem timely. It is not hard to look around and see political instability and fear the path that this might take us down. To hear of natural disasters around the world and humanitarian crises and feel overwhelmed. We might even look at our buildings and our communities of faith in the United Church of Canada, remembering past identities and decades, and fear the end of some particular way of being together. Yet this gospel message gives us hope, because we are reminded that we are prepared, as we are right now, to respond in faith to and with God. God has equipped us for this time, for our communities. Like God in Luke's gospel was not defined by the temple, nor is God defined by the church. It can be so helpful to remember that God is not defined by St. Paul's United Church. But God is faithful in our participation in sharing God's love with one another and to the people in our communities outside the walls of this church. God is sustaining and endures throughout our lifetime and throughout history. The beauty amidst all the uncertainty and turmoil is that we can see modeled a way to come to Jesus, to God, through the children in our community. They come uninhibited by yesterday, as today is fresh and new. And they model a sense of play that allows for recreation and do-overs. And they let their imagination lead them on adventures where the outcomes are unknown. When I was in Chicago in the winter for training with the Family Faith Everyday Research Program, we were in groups at tables and tasked with building the tallest structure in the room using marshmallows, toothpicks, and paper clips. You may be familiar, I've heard this, about this task. Each group went about their work, and there was a variety of strategies that the groups were used to achieve the task. And at the end, we talked about the different ways we went about it. We all laughed together as we measured. There was a tower that was tall, but nobody had removed their hand to see if it would stand, and it fell. One that made it just in time to get measured, and one that stood, but was significantly smaller than the rest. After it was shared by our program director that some of the best people for building these structures in the allotted time were children. The reason was that they just tried. And if the structure came tumbling down, they started again. And they figured it out and worked at it and they figured out what worked and didn't along the way. As adults, we try to get it all figured out before we even start. Yet children remind us that we are already equipped to try. What if we remind ourselves that we too are children of God, called and equipped to just try? That we are called to play and partner with God in sharing the good news. How would we hear Luke's gospel? Understanding it through our own particular challenges and turmoil. As history teaches us that destruction and ends are inevitable. Our towers, whatever they are, will collapse. But that we live in hope that God is working with us to respond to what is right before us, right now. It's not about what we have done or been, or not really about what tomorrow will be, but who we are right now, with all the pieces we have at this moment. Who will St. Paul's be together, fostering relationships that allow safety for curiosity and exploration? Where might it lead? So I leave you with Rafi's words once again. To be heard by every one of us here as children of God, called and served to bring God's love to all people. Every child is a child of the universe, here to sing a song of beauty and grace, here to love like a flower in bloom. Every girl and boy, a blessing and a joy. Amen.